I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you are standing in water,
Yeah.
but this isn't a nice, clear swimming pool. And it isn't some tropical beach in the Maldives.
Right.
It's murky. It's brown. It's sluggish. You are wading through this sludge right up to your waist. It smells like old algae and, well, stagnation.
Yeah.
Every time you try to take a step, the mud just sucks at your ankles. It's heavy. It's hard to move. You can't see the bottom. And honestly, it is just exhausting.
That is a very visceral and, frankly, miserable image.
It is. But stay with me here.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to contrast that exact feeling with diving into the deep ocean. We're talking deep, crystal clear, buoyant blue water.
Oh, that's better.
You feel weightless. You can see all the way down to the bottom. You can see the horizon. There is absolutely no resistance. You are just floating.
And that right there, that is the central metaphor of the material we are diving into today. It's the difference between fighting gravity and finding flow. Because today we are looking at this really fascinating source text titled Stop Waiting and Waiting in Shallow Muddy Waters.
And we definitely have to mention the punctuation there. 3 exclamation points.
Yeah, they were not whispering.
No, they certainly were not.
It's an incredibly high-energy text. Honestly, it reads like a collision between like a spiritual revival sermon and a quantum physics textbook.
Right.
It's part self-improvement roadmap, part religious exhortation. But it blends those traditional concepts with the language of energy, vibrations, and frequency.
Yeah, I noticed that right away. Because it's talking about God, but in the next breath, it's literally talking about frequencies and tuning forks. And visually, the source material is striking too. There's this recurring motif of these golden badges, almost like a sheriff's star, and imagery of a figure rising triumphantly out of the water with this label that says, Certified, Citizen of the Deep.
Which is just a fantastic title. I mean, who doesn't want to be a citizen of the deep?
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how to actually earn that badge.
Let's do it.
We're going to unpack what the source calls the physics of frequency, look at the real energetic cost of settling for less, what they call the mud, and then we are going to walk step by step through the 7-day challenge they provide to help you actually move from those shallows into the deep.
And I think settling is really the key word there. The text posits that staying in the shallow end isn't just this neutral choice, like picking a flavor of ice cream.
Right.
It argues that staying in the mud is actively damaging your potential.
So let's start with the mud. In the source, muddy water is a huge concept.
Right.
But it redefines what that actually means, right? Because it uses the word sin quite a bit, but definitely not in the way most people might expect.
Exactly. Usually when we hear the word sin, we just tune out. We think of a list of arbitrary rules, a bunch of don'ts, or just moral failings and guilt.
Yeah, heavy religious baggage.
Right. But this source reframes sin as density.
Density, like the physics term.
It is a physics term, yeah. The text argues that negative patterns, things like unhealed trauma, toxic attachments, bitterness, gossiping, self-loathing, these aren't just quote-unquote bad behaviors.
Right.
They have a physical weight to them. They have a heavy, slow vibration. So muddy water isn't just about being bad. It's about being weighed down.
That makes it feel so much more mechanical. It's like if you tie rocks to your ankles, you're obviously going to sink.
Yeah.
It's not because the ocean is judging you. It's just gravity.
Precisely. It removes the shame entirely and replaces it with mechanics. And this leads directly into what the source calls the law of resonance.
Oh, this is good.
This is really the core argument of the entire text. You cannot receive what you are not a vibrational match for.
So using a radio analogy, you can't tune into FM 105, the station playing the hits, if your dial is stuck on AM 60 static.
That's a perfect analogy. The source argues that you cannot manifest a clear water life, which it defines as peace, abundance, divine love, clarity, if you are still holding on to muddy water habits.
Because you are literally on the wrong frequency to receive those things.
Right. You're invisible to the things you want because you aren't broadcasting on their channel.
There's a line in the text that I highlighted immediately because it's just so catchy. It asks, how do you expect to win if you're still playing in sin?
It's very catchy, sure. But if we swap sin for density or low vibration, the question becomes, how do you expect to fly if you're holding on to an anchor.
You can't.
You can't manifest a light, buoyant life while holding on to heavy, dense habits. The physics just don't work.
Right, and the source is pretty strict about this, too. It says you can't just wish for the clear water. You have to actually do something it calls dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
This is where the active work really comes in. Elevation isn't passive. You don't just magically drift into the deep. You have to swim there.
So what does that look like?
Well, the source lists specific actions: repentance, prayer, meditation, chakra healing, and shadow work. It calls these things tuning forks.
I love that image, a tuning fork. You strike it, and it basically forces the instrument to match its pitch.
Exactly. You're using these practices, whether it's prayer or chakra work, to tune your internal instrument back to the divine frequency. And notice the mix of traditions there, too.
Yeah, repentance sitting right next to chakra healing.
Right. It's a very traditional religious concept right alongside Eastern energy work. The source is synthesizing these into a single toolkit. It's basically saying, use whatever tool you need to get the mud off.
Okay, so if the clear water is so great peace, love, floating effortlessly, why do we stay in the mud? Why is it so incredibly hard to leave a job we hate, or a relationship that drains us, or a mindset that makes us miserable?
It has a pretty fascinating psychological explanation for this. It calls it comfortable chaos.
Comfortable chaos. That sounds paradoxically cozy, like a blanket made of sandpaper.
It's the ego's safety net. The source posits that the ego naturally prefers a known hell to an unknown heaven.
Oof. That hits hard.
Think about it, though. The mud might be gross. It might be toxic. It might smell like stagnation. But it is warm. And it is familiar.
You know where the bottom is.
Exactly. You know how the drama works. You know who you are in the mud. The deep water, that's vast, that's silent, that's totally unknown.
So we stay because we're just scared of the unknown. We'd rather be miserable and certain than happy and uncertain.
Precisely. But the source also mentions another fear, which really resonated with me when I read it: the fear of being alone. This is the whole section on the loneliness of elevation.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because that feels like the biggest barrier for a lot of people.
The source doesn't shy away from this at all. It explicitly says that as you vibrate higher, as you move toward that clear water, your tribe is going to change.
Because the people in the mud can't swim in the deep.
Metaphorically, yes. The source says some people simply cannot breathe in the clearer air you are moving into. Their vibration is matched to the density.
So they stay behind.
Right. If you elevate, you leave them behind. And that creates a massive temptation to shrink back to the shallow end just to have company.
Which brings us to the Mr. Wrong archetype mentioned in the text. This part was brutal. It talks about fishing for Mr. Wrong in the shallow end.
It frames that as an act of pure desperation.
The analogy it uses is wild. It says reaching for the wrong person just because they are there is like trying to eat rotten fruit because you're afraid fresh fruit won't grow.
It's a really powerful indictment of the scarcity mindset. You are basically telling the universe, I don't trust the harvest that is coming, so I'll settle for this trash right now because at least I can hold it.
That brings us to another concept that really flips the script on how we usually view our lives: divine filtration. Usually when we get rejected or dumped or we lose a friend, we spiral. We think, what's wrong with me?
Right. But the source says, stop looking at it emotionally and look at the physics. If you are vibrating at a new high frequency and someone leaves your life, that isn't rejection, that is filtration.
Filtration. So the trash essentially took itself out.
Essentially, yes. The quote from the text is, if God took it away, he is simply clearing the shelf for something that actually fits your new frequency.
Wow.
It views a breakup or a closed door as the literal removal of a toxin that would have infected the new dimension you're entering.
That is such a healthier way to look at it. I wasn't rejected, I was filtered for my own protection.
Exactly. But, and here's the major catch, between the old life and the new life, there is a terrifying place.
The gap.
The gap.
Explain the gap for us, because I feel like this is where most people just quit.
The gap is the space where you have let go of the mud. So you don't have the old comforts, the old bad habits, the toxic XCs. But the clear water life hasn't materialized yet.
It's empty.
It's totally empty. It's silent.
Like the hallway between the doors.
Yes. And it is where fear lives. It's where you feel most alone. You've let go of the old, but you haven't grabbed the new. And the instruction from the source here is explicit and imperative. Do not swim back.
It's like being in the middle of a lake. You can't see the shore you left, and you can't see the shore you're going to. You're just treading water in the fog.
And the instinct is always to swim back to what you know. But the source insists that the emptiness isn't an absence, it's preparation. It is the universe clearing the deck so something massive can land.
Okay, so we know the theory now. We know we need to get out of the mud. We know it's going to be lonely for a bit, and we know we can't eat rotten fruit. But how do we actually do it? We can't just sit around vibrating.
No, you definitely need a plan. And fortunately, the source provides a literal 7-day challenge to become a certified citizen of the deep.
This is the how-to section. It's specifically designed to move you from muddy shallows to clear water clarity. Let's walk through it day by day, because I think you listening might actually want to try this.
Let's do it. It starts with days 1 through 3, which are totally focused on internal alignment.
Day 1 is the spiritual audit. This sounds like tax season for the soul. What's the actual task?
Well, you can't clean what you don't see. So the task is to write down 3 habits, thoughts, or people that make you feel heavy. Again, you are looking for the density.
Yeah.
Maybe it's your addiction to bad news. Maybe it's a friend who only ever calls to complain. Maybe it's your own self-criticism. Write it down.
Just identifying them, putting it on paper makes it real. Okay, moving to day 2.
The power of repentance. But remember, not the shame version. It defines repentance simply as a change of direction.
Right.
The task is to stop one muddy behavior, gossiping, doom scrolling, complaining, and replace it with silence.
Silence. That is so much harder than it sounds. If I stop scrolling online, my brain wants to do something else immediately.
That's the addiction to the noise. You literally have to sit with the withdrawal, which leads perfectly into day 3, tuning the frequency. The task here is 10 minutes of total silence. But here's the key constraint. You aren't allowed to ask for anything.
Wait, really? No praying for a new car? No asking for a promotion?
Absolutely no requests, just listening. The source argues you can't hear the new frequency if you're constantly broadcasting your own noise. You have to become a receiver.
Okay, so we've audited, we've pivoted, and we've listened. Now we hit days 4 and 5. These feel a bit more aggressive to me. This is releasing and guarding.
Day 4 focuses on heart chakra healing. It claims that unforgiveness is basically mud that cakes onto the walls of your heart. It hardens you and it blocks the flow.
So the task is forgiveness.
Specifically, releasing a grudge against someone or against yourself. It says you have to release the heavy to make room for the heavenly.
That's a great line.
It is. You can't ascend if you're holding on to anger. It's literally like trying to swim with a backpack full of rocks.
And then day 5, this is one that might make people sweat a little bit. Guarding the gate.
This is all about boundaries. The specific task is to delete or mute shallow water contacts.
Actual deletion, like going into your phone and blocking numbers.
Yes. If someone constantly pulls you back into the mud gossip, negativity, toxic history, you cut the cord. The source says if they don't respect your new vibration, they do not get access to your energy.
That feels harsh, but I guess it's the Mr. Wrong filter in action. You're literally removing the option to backslide.
It is environmental control. If you're trying to get sober, you don't hang out in a bar. If you're trying to get deep, you don't hang out in the shallow end.
That makes total sense. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Days 6 and 7. This phase is mindset and action.
Day 6 is mental renewal. This is about crossing those T's. The instruction is that every time a shallow thought enters your mind like fear, lack, or I'm not good enough, you immediately state a truth to counter it.
So if I think I'm never going to meet anyone, what do I do?
You might say out loud, I'm being prepared for a divine connection. You do not let the muddy thought sit there and take root. You replace it instantly. It's active mental gardening.
And finally, day 7, navigating the deep.
The bold step. You've done the internal work, you've cleared the mud, now you have to actually manifest it in the real world. The task is to do one thing that is purposefully you.
What does that look like in practice?
It could be launching a project you've been scared of because you thought you weren't ready. It could be having a difficult but necessary conversation where you finally speak your truth. Or pursuing a dream you shelved.
Taking action.
Yes, an action that proves to yourself and to the universe that you are no longer afraid of the deep water.
Throughout this whole 7-day challenge, the source also provides these really interesting rhythmic mantras. They're almost like marching songs or earworms just to keep you focused.
They call them daily truths. They're specifically designed to be catchy so they stick in your head when you're tempted to slide back into the mud.
The one for day 2 is definitely my favorite. My no to the old is a yes to the gold.
It's simple, but it completely reframes the loss. You aren't losing the old habit. You are gaining the gold. It shifts the entire focus from deprivation to acquisition.
So let's say you get through the 7 days. You've purged the contacts, you've sat in the silence, you've taken the bold step. The source talks about a victory lap. How do you know if you've actually succeeded? Is it just a feeling you get?
This is a really fascinating part of the text. The sign of success isn't necessarily that everything is perfect instantly or that you win the lottery. The sign is actually a change in your perception.
How so?
The source says you know you're a citizen of the deep when the shallow water starts to feel cold. When old conversations that used to entertain you now just feel noisy.
Oh, that's good. It's when you go back to hang out with your old crew or visit your old haunts and you just look around and realize, I don't fit here anymore.
Exactly. It's visceral. You've outgrown the environment. You aren't judging them necessarily, but you realize you are suffocating there. That discomfort is actually the victory.
Wow.
It means your frequency has shifted. You are no longer compatible with the mud.
That is the exact moment the source calls graduation.
Certified citizen of the deep. You've officially accepted the mandate to stop selling.
It's a lot to take in, honestly. It frames life not as just things happening to you, but as this constant active process of tuning and filtering. It's incredibly empowering, but it's also a lot of responsibility.
It puts the responsibility squarely on your shoulders. You choose your depth. You choose your frequency. The mud is always going to be there, but you don't have to live in it.
So let's bring this all back to you listening. We've talked about mud, frequencies, rotten fruit, and golden badges. If you're listening to this deep dive, you're probably thinking about your own life right now. You're probably picturing your own mud.
I think the most crucial question the source poses is about that concept of comfortable chaos.
The known hell.
Yes. I'd ask you directly, what mud are you holding on to simply because it feels familiar? Is it a relationship? A job? A way of thinking about yourself? What are you tolerating just because you're afraid of the empty space?
It's easy to complain about the mud, but it's so hard to get out of it because it's warm.
And getting out requires that terrifying swim through the gap.
That's the image I'm really left with today. That silence between the old and the new.
And that leads to a perfect final thought to chew on. We talked about how the hardest part of growth is that empty space, the gap. The source says, do not swim back.
Right.
But here's the real question to ask yourself. Are you brave enough to stand in that silence, to feel that loneliness and trust that it isn't an end, but a beginning? Because if you run back to the noise the second it gets quiet, you'll never see the clear water.
You'll never earn the badge.
You'll never earn the badge.
Deep stuff, literally. Thanks for diving in with us today.
My pleasure.
We'll see you in the deep end.